Hello and good day to you. You're once again welcome to MSR Construction, where we'll discuss all things engineering, architecture and 3D modeling. Today, we'll be learning how to model a die in Blender. And as you can see, we have these dies already modeled, and I think they look quite realistic, and this is what we'll be trying to model. In our tutorial for today, you can however go to our material viewport to see the model in material mode in order to appreciate it even better. In the material viewport, you can see exactly what the color looks like, and I think we should try to see how we can replicate the model right away. Let's go back to our object viewport and create a new scene to draw our model. You may simply use your default scene. When you open Blender, I'm only creating a new scene to preserve the original model in the project file. This will also help us to easily copy our lamps to the new scene, but we could also simply use Shift A to add a lamp to our scene and duplicate the lamps to illuminate our scene. Now, we could select all the lamps and copy as shown. Then we can go into the new scene to paste the copied items as shown. What we want to do now is to try to model our die from a cube. We need to create more faces on our cube and can either subdivide or toggle to our edge select mode to create loop cuts in order to create more faces on our cube. In this case, we can simply create loop cuts. We can make the number of cuts to be 6 and do this for all the sides of the cube as shown. Now, you notice that the lines didn't go through the center, hence, in order to accomplish that, we need another loop cut at the center, and this is important because some of the elements in our model are positioned at the center of the model. We can also create a centered cut at the top of the mesh as shown. We need to toggle back to our vertex select mode in order to model the one on the die. Select the centered vertex as shown. Now, we want to create a hole in the mesh using the selected vertex, and to do that, we can simply bevel the vertex. Go to Vertex option as shown and select Bevel Vertices, or use the shortcut Shift Ctrl B. Give the bevel 2 segments and leave the profile shape for now as 0.5, the material index as 1, and pretty much every other setting can be left as default for now. Set the width of the bevel to 475mm. I love to work with millimeters, so I'll just change my units from meters to millimeters as shown. The reason why we are sticking with 475 is to ensure that the width of our bevel doesn't exceed the width of the space within each cell in order to prevent discrepancies due to overlapping vertices or doubles in our model. Now, in order to get a circle inscribed into our cell, we need to change the value of the profile, and we can change that to 0.1, and then we can go on to adjust the value of our segments as well. And I think it's okay to go with 6 segments, and there we have a perfect circle inscribed in our cell. The next step is to select all the faces in the circle and delete them to create a hollow in the top face of our mesh. Select delete faces, and we have a hollow on the mesh that will serve as an elementary model for our one on the die. Now, with a bit of ingenuity, we can repeat similar procedure to create the number elements on the other sides of our die. However, we need to know exactly where each element must be modeled, and in order to do that, we can reference an existing model or a reference image, especially if we don't know the exact position of each element. I have an existing model, and I think it's okay to work with that. I can simply rotate this model to keep my one on top as it is in my new model, and use it to ascertain which side of my mesh the elements 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on should be modeled. Now you can see that when we have 1 on top, we have 3 next to 5, 4 on the opposite side of 3, and 2 on the opposite side of 5. We can now proceed to model 3, and we know that on the opposite side of 3, we have 4, and by its side, we have 5. In order to model the hollow for 3, create additional loop cuts on both sides as shown and ensure that the vertex at the center of the model is selected as shown and alongside the vertices of the new loop cuts on the same line as shown. We may now bevel the vertices all at once as shown and follow the previous methods we used to create one. Create more loop cuts at the top and bottom as shown to model the hollow for 4, then follow the same procedure as 3. We have 1, 3, 4, and we need 5 and 2. But in order to model 5, we know that 5 is next to 3 and 2 is positioned opposite to 5. In order to model 5, we need to create additional loop cuts on the sides as shown. Select the vertices from the edges of the new loop cuts as shown and repeat similar procedure as we did for 4. To model 2, create additional loop cuts as shown and select 2 vertices from the edges of the loop. Ensure selected vertices are offsetted from the center as shown, then bevel vertices and repeat similar procedure as it was done for 5. Delete faces and go to the bottom of your mesh to model 6. Now we have successfully modeled the numbers on our die. However, in our next lesson, we will proceed to work on modeling a hard surface that looks more solid and photorealistic. We hope you're able to learn a thing or two that you can replicate in your personal projects. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more content on Blender for 3D modeling and Blender for 3D architecture. We also encourage you to turn on your notification bell to be the first to watch our latest tutorial videos on Blender for 3D modeling and Blender for 3D architecture. Thanks for watching and bye for now.